This is Ana Dittmar. I first met her when she was the chief of resources here at the park. She actually grew up in Philadelphia. She got a master's and a Ph.D. in anthropology from Rutgers University in New Jersey. And then she did the academic thing and became a professor at Southern Utah University during the 1990s. And then she had a little bit of switch there, and she started her government service career at Zion National Park as a ranger and a field archaeologist. And through her career, she worked as a museum curator, archaeologist, and cultural and natural resources manager. That's with the National Park Service. And then with the Forest Service, she was historic resource manager. So she's had quite a variety of experiences, and she's here tonight to talk to us about icons. Anyway, I think it's wonderful to have Ana Dittmar here as our first speaker for the Sesquicentennial Speaker Series. So welcome, Ana, and look forward to everything you have to share with us. So thank you. It's all yours. And I think all the stuff taken care of.
Well, thanks for coming out tonight. I know I don't like to go out after dinner, so thank you for coming. And so, as Anne said, I'm going to be talking about actually St. Michael's Cathedral and the icons in St. Michael's Cathedral. And I'm also going to be talking about the transition for those items and that structure, the transition from through the sale to the U.S. of Alaska. So. Okay, you all, and I'm assuming a certain amount of basic knowledge about St. Michael's Cathedral. Is there anyone here who has never been inside St. Michael's Cathedral? Oh, you haven't. Well, you should come down and come to the store on a Saturday, and I'll take you over to the cathedral and I'll give you a little tour. Okay? I think almost everybody's been in. You might not have been in for very long, or maybe didn't know too much about what you were looking at, but I think everybody... I'm sure you've seen the cathedral. You can't help seeing it. You have to walk around it or drive around it, so it's really the center of Sitka. Anyway, so the title of the talk is The Icons of St. Michael's Cathedral, the Russian liturgical treasures in Sitka during the time of transfer. Have I already done something wrong? Okay. All right. And that's a picture of that, whoops. This is a picture, it's one of the first photographs taken of St. Michael's Cathedral. Unfortunately, at the time of transfer in 1867, there really weren't photographs being taken. So all of the old photographs and the historic photographs that I have access to really were taken later, you know, in the 1880s, 1890s, and turn of the century. So this was one of the very first photos taken of St. Michael's Cathedral when it was fairly new. All right, some of the, this looks daunting, doesn't it? There's very little words in this. It's mostly pictures, so bear with me for the first few slides. St. Michael's, some basic facts that I'm assuming you know, or if you don't know now, you do. St. Michael's Cathedral was built in 1844 to 1848. While Alaska was a Russian colony, it was designed by the Russian bishop and funded by the Russian America Company. A Russian Orthodox bishop known by a series of changing titles, which included Siberia to Sitka, was installed here. Now, that might be a little confusing to some people, but when a bishop is placed in a cathedral, it's called an installation. Kind of like the ordination makes him a bishop, but the installation installs him in a certain cathedral. So there were a series of Russian bishops, and they lived at the Russian bishop's house, as the name implies. But the title that they had changed frequently was Kamchatka Peninsula. A lot of the geographical names were in Siberia, and then they would sort of tack on "and America." So there were times when this bishop's title was all these places in Siberia and Russia, and then this sort of "and America," you know, which is a huge area, but it was quite a job, quite a huge pastoral area for one bishop. Okay. After the sale of Alaska to the United States, St. Michael's Cathedral became part of the Diocese of Sitka and Alaska. So a lot of people ask me, after the sale, what happened to it? Well, that's what happened. Became part of the Diocese of Alaska and no longer a part of the Diocese of Russia or Siberia or those other areas. Okay, where are we? Until the Russian Revolution in 1917, the Tsar of Russia funded the Russian Orthodox Church in Alaska, in America. So, you might not have known that, but this is one reason why the Russian cultural influence is great in Alaska, because after the U.S. purchased Alaska, the Russian Tsar was still funding Russian religion and culture. So the priests that came here, quite a few of them came from Russia. They were trained in Russia. They spoke Russian. Some of them didn't even speak English when they came. So that's kind of something that most people don't even think about. But it was quite an important influence that spanned both the pre-transfer, transfer, and post-transfer period. The OCA, that's an acronym for the Orthodox Church in America, exists alongside the Orthodox Church in Russia, but it's not under its authority. It's a very cobwebby world in the Russian Orthodox Church. There are many divisions. When I was growing up in Philadelphia, there were 2 or 3 different ones. My family went to the OCA, Russian Orthodox Church. But a few blocks away, there was another Russian Orthodox Church that was associated was under the authority of the Russian Church outside of Russia. And then there was another one, the Church in Exile. I mean, everybody was pretty confused after the revolution really messed everything up here as well as in Russia. So these different sects still exist. So like I said, when I was growing up in the 50s and 60s, right a few blocks away, there was another church, another Russian Orthodox church, but they followed the patriarch in Russia, whereas the priest that ran the church that I went to, he was part of the church in America, the Russian Orthodox Church in America, that had their own head in Washington.
So which authority does St. Michael's come under now?
OCA. OCA. But our bishop does make trips to Russia. So they tried to have a friendly relationship. But I have to say, I noticed in the past 5 or 6 years it's cooled off a little bit, whereas before that things were moving closer and closer together. And they were even talking about borrowing priests, get priests from the Russian church in Russia to come here and work in some of the churches that we have here that don't have any priests. And that's kind of chilled a bit. So it's very wrapped up in politics as well. Okay, it's a very interesting and exciting world, besides uplifting. In 1966, the Sitka fire burned down St. Michael's Cathedral, and then it was rebuilt by 1977. It took a long time to rebuild it. 4 years to build originally and 11 years. It all had to do with funding, getting funding. They got some funds, they did a little building, got some more funds, did a little bit more building. Took a while. But all that time, they were having services in the basement. So services didn't stop. The parishioners were still using St. Michael's Cathedral, just not upstairs. St. Michael's Cathedral is a National Historic Landmark, and it's notable as an important legacy of Russian influence in North America and particularly in Southeast Alaska. Okay. Some of the talking points that I've already gotten into some of them. We're going to peek inside St. Michael's at the icon collection. We'll do an overview of some of the icons there. There are probably more than 1,000 icons, so we're not going to get to all of them, but I have some photographs of whole walls, full. We'll also talk about the critical dates affecting St. Michael's Cathedral, 1844 to 1848, when it was being built. And then probably most importantly for this talk is 1867 to 1870, the transfer itself. That made quite a deep impact on the parish as well as the cathedral itself. And then 1917, that was the date of the Russian Revolution. So Russian Revolution affected Alaska big time. You just, if you're in that crowd. Okay. And then we'll look a little bit at St. Michael's Cathedral and parish during the transfer years, and that fits in with the 1867 to 1870 and beyond. We'll get into the 1880s a little bit too. And then lastly, hopefully we'll have enough time, I'll show you the cathedral's two new icons that you may have seen in the newspaper. They were both written or created in 2017. So one of them is Our Lady of the Inexhaustible Cup. I'll show you a picture of that and talk about that a little bit. And the other one, it's a big, very large, and it's a big shrine inside St. Michael's. You can come in and see it. And the other one is the Six Saints of Sitka. These were all men, but they were clergy who spent time in Sitka or were ordained here or were bishops here and then were canonized later for something they did. Okay. All right, and that was, okay, I won't talk about that yet. All right, now the pictures start. I promise not much more reading. Okay, this is to demonstrate or illustrate the continuity of use and significance of St. Michael's Orthodox Cathedral. And the photograph is of the installation. I told you what an installation was. Installation of Bishop David. And this is Bishop David here. He has his bishop's robe on. And this is the Metropolitan. That's the Metropolitan's robe. And the Metropolitan he lives in Washington, D.C., and he is the head of all the other bishops. Now, they're supposed to be all equal. It's not like the Pope. They're all equal, and he's just more equal. So he's the lead. He's the lead. Metropolitan. Where do we go? There we go. Metropolitan. And this is a bishop. He's the Bishop of New York. There, that guy. And he was the acting bishop until Bishop David was installed and ordained. This is Bishop Benjamin, and he's the Archbishop of the West of the United States. So he lives in San Francisco. And this over here is, let me see, I think that is, gosh, I forget his name. Might be Leo. But he's the bishop, he's a Bulgarian bishop. So Russians have their system and their liturgical hierarchy, but so do the Serbs and the Albanians and the blah, blah, blah. Many. There are many. So I go back to what I was saying before about growing up in Philadelphia, going to a Russian Orthodox church. A few blocks away, there was another Russian Orthodox church, but they had their authority was in Russia. And then there was another church, another 3 blocks away, that was Ukrainian Orthodox. And we never went there because we didn't speak Ukrainian in my family. But we did once or twice drop into the Russian church outside of Russia. And that was an interesting experience for a child. I could feel the difference between the OCA church in America that I went to and this one that had the authority in Russia. I could feel the difference. Then there was also about 2 miles away, there was a Orthodox church, Serbian Orthodox church. And then a couple blocks away, there was another one. It was the Ukrainian, was it the Ukrainian Catholic Church? Yeah, it was Byzantine Ukrainian Catholic Church. Anyway, like I said before, it's a spider web. There's so many different segments that it takes a while to figure out what's going on. Look, I grew up in it, and I'm still trying to figure it out. But when I read history books about it, a lot of light bulbs go on, like, oh, yeah, that's what those people were doing, or, oh, that's why that woman was over there, you know. So it's good. It's been an adventure for me. You see yourself in there, James? Here? Well, anyway, so these are all the bishops that came. I think there were 8 of them that came from the lower 48 to be here to welcome Bishop David into his new office, and meaning his position. And he was ordained the bishop up in Anchorage, where our cathedral is now. And then he came down here to be installed in Sitka because it's the historic capital. So his title is Bishop David, Bishop of Sitka and Alaska. And he's very proud of that, I think. He feels a legacy. He's a good guy. Okay. This is St. Michael's Cathedral interior recently. So I'm going to be talking about the iconostasis here, this wall of icons. These are all original icons that came over from Russia and were put up here in the original St. Michael's before the fire. And some of them predate the cathedral at all. Some of them are from the very early 1800s. And then this is our parish, or who was there that week that we took the photos. We have a few Mount Edgecombe students. So the parish consists of a native community. There are non-native Orthodox people that come to St. Michael's, and quite a few of those are converts. Most of them, I think, are converts. And then you have the Mount Edgecombe students who were Orthodox, and then when they come to Mount Edgecombe, some of them come to church on Sunday at St. Michael's Cathedral. Now this week we're having a lot of them come because it's Easter. You know, it's a very, very, very sacred week this week in the Orthodox Church. And there I think you see Herman Davis. And anyway, I won't point out everybody, but you might see people you know. Okay, and this is a home to icons of the 18th, 19th, 20th, and 21st centuries. That's quite a span.
The icons survived the fire?
Yes, they did. There was one icon that burned, and all the others were rescued. And the town came out and supported St. Michael's and rescued. Yeah, it was great. Everybody lent a hand. The one that burned was, you can't see the spot where it was, but it was over here, behind the chandelier. Even the chandelier was part of the original cathedral, and it got rescued from the fire and then put back in the reproduction. So the icon back here that got burned, it wouldn't come off, and the person who was trying to remove it gave up after a while and just tried to rescue some other icons. So it was screwed on in such a way that they couldn't get it off. And it is the icon of the Last Supper, and it was in a sunburst shape. And so the space where the icon is now, we put another one up there. We put a rectangular one up there, but the space is still a sunburst space. So the bishop, he wants to someday make a reproduction of the original sunburst shaped one and put it there. Okay.
Do you know about how long between when they realized the fire was threatening the town and when it set fire to the church, about how long a span of time we're talking about? Minutes, hours?
Oh, hours. Yeah, any of you that went to that commemoration, 60th anniversary of the fire, do you remember that? And people told their tales about the fire. It was in January, the beginning of January, like a super cold winter, and it was during the night, on a Saturday night, I think. Not a night that you really would get up and check. And the alarm went off. Oh, there was something wrong with the alarm. Is that right? Is that what happened? There was something wrong with the alarm. It was going off because of the extreme cold. And so the volunteer fire department, people didn't respond when they heard the ringing. And then finally about, I think it was like 1 o'clock. I'm trying to remember, but forgive me if I'm off. But I think it was like around 1 when the first ringing started. And then it was about 5 o'clock when people finally came out. And by that time, so many buildings in the middle of downtown Sitka burned. I think there were like 15 or 17 buildings that burned down, quite a few. And St. Michael's was one of them. But the fire seemed to start high and then work its way down. So the bells melted that were in the bell tower, but that gave people time to rescue the icons and other liturgical items that were on and the chandelier that was on the first floor. I mean, that was, on the first floor. Okay, so this is the contemporary exterior. It's about 40 years old now, and it's almost historic itself. So just wait around a little longer, and we'll have another historic building. Now, because it has been in continuous use as a religious structure since the time of the original cathedral, in the same space, and it has many of the same objects in it. That's why it's on the National Register, and it's a National Historic Landmark. Okay, because if it didn't, then it wouldn't qualify. Okay, it doesn't have to be exactly the original building. There are other reasons why it would be significant enough. So that's what happened, and it is built. The replica was rebuilt using the original blueprints, so it's pretty close. Okay, here we are back to the historic exterior, but the photo was taken after the transfer. But I was struck. Actually, it's quite beautiful, but I was struck by how muddy and messy it is. You know, all around here, there's like mud and these walkways, kind of like at the Russian bishop's house. You have that same phenomena. And that kind of just jumped out at me, like, wow, you have this beautiful cathedral inside and this messy exterior outside, you know, just bring it in, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, it was quite a miracle that they could build that here in Sitka. Most of the supplies came from Russia. No. These are all the names that are given to the Russian Orthodox Church in America. When I was growing up, the church I went to had a big sign across it, and the sign said, St. Nicholas, Russian Orthodox Greek Catholic Church. Go figure. Yeah, it was kind of confusing. And then it's sometimes called the Russian Church. Where's that? There it is. The Russian Church. Sometimes called the Greek Church. You'll see in old photographs and postcards, you might see it say Greek Church, and it's a picture of St. Michael's Cathedral. That's why, because the Greeks converted the Russians. The Russians weren't Christian. The Greeks were Christian first, and then they converted the Russians. So they called it the Greek Church, even though it was in Russia. Anyway, it does confuse people. And sometimes it was called the Creole Church. Sometimes it was called the Tlingit Church. Sometimes it's called the Sitka Church. Within the Orthodox Church, a lot of people will say, "Where do you go to church?" "I go to the Sitka Church." You know, and everybody knows it's St. Michael's. So that's kind of inside talk, jargon. The Sitka Church, or St. Michael's, that's what you most commonly hear it called. Archangel Michael Orthodox Cathedral is another more formal name for it. But all of those mean the same structure. And these are turn-of-the-century photos. They're like 1890, 1895, 1900 rather. So this takes you down Lincoln Street, and you see it's right there. We had a priest here about 7 years ago who, during his sermon, he said, "You know, this isn't the church down the street. It's the church in the middle of the street." That stuck in my mind, because isn't that true? And here's another front view. And there's the bell tower. And there's the old clock. It has a black face, but when they rebuilt it, it has a white face. So that's how you can tell whether the photo was taken before the fire or after the fire, of the old St. Michael's or the new. If you can see the clock, that'll help you. Okay. Center, yeah, we know it's in the center of Sitka. These are more funky kind of photos of the cathedral. You see the mud thing, and the boardwalks, And then down here, there's a boardwalk here. But you really didn't want to walk in the street, I don't think. But anyway, there's St. Michael's there. Okay, and here's an early postcard of St. Michael's Cathedral. That was kind of nice. Old postcards are fun to study. And this is the blueprints, part of the blueprints of St. Michael's Cathedral, Sitka. And this is a Merrill photo, and I'm sure it's colorized. And this is the original cathedral. And there's the iconostas. So behind the iconostas, inside, is the sacristy, or the sacred area. These are the royal doors. And the original cathedral had more pillars it holds up the dome, these pillars. The new cathedral has a different material is used to make the dome, so they have fewer pillars, and it's nice because you can see what's going on. The pillars, you could lean on them, I guess, because we stand. So it's nice to have something to lean on, but it also blocks your view. The cathedral interior, 1895, not colorized. This is when it was about 50 years old, and it was historic. Before it burned, it was historic. It was well over 100 years old. And it's home to icons. It was home to icons of the 18th and 19th centuries. That's the 1700s and 1800s. This is the funky 1880s. I call it the funky 1880s. The church was 40 years old and almost historic the first time. And they're kind of fuzzy photos, but that's what they did in those days. That's what you could get. They did sort of need a paint job. This was after the transfer, and things were starting to crumble.
Is that a clock on that side too?
Yes, it had more than one clock, the original. Yeah, good catch, yeah. So this is the side of St. Michael's. It had a clock there and on the other side too. We only have one clock now. Oh dear, how did that get in there? All right. Okay, I wanted to do that one more time so you could compare and contrast with the old. This is the new. All right, this is the royal doors, and this is the iconostas. It goes all the way over this way and all the way over that way. Has huge icons on this iconostas. We have Christ on this side, and the Mary on this side, his mother, the Virgin Mary. And on the royal doors, these are hand-carved wood and painted gold. And they were rescued during the fire and placed back in there after the fire. So isn't that nice? But on the royal doors, there are 4 icons of the, you can't really see them very well, but of the evangelists, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, who wrote the Gospels. And then we have the Annunciation. We have Archangel Gabriel over here announcing to Mary, who is over here. Those are round icons, and these are square icons. And that's pretty typical of almost all royal doors. They'll have the Annunciation in the center. Is that true of the Russian bishop's house? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you've got a round Annunciation in the center, and then Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And then we also have some other interesting items here. We have, this is the staff that Innocent Venominov, Bishop Innocent, used. That's his actual staff. And when our bishop comes down, Bishop David comes down to Sitka, he uses that sometimes. He likes to use that. It helps him to feel connected to the original bishop. Okay. I wanted to show you, just point out the chandelier. Oh, what happened to oh, there it is. There's the rest of it. It's a huge object. If you haven't, next time you go into St. Michael's, make sure you look at the chandelier. It's just huge, very heavy. And now we're trying to clean up for Easter. So, we're having to climb up on ladders and try to get the brass cleaned off. And I try not to watch because it's very, very scary to see the older women go up and do that. The doors are wide open, so you can see right into the sacristy there. And you can see the altar and all the things that are on the altar. And over here, we have an icon on a pedestal. And when an Orthodox person comes into church, they'll first go to this icon here, which is lost, at St. Michael the Archangel. And that's placed there because it's St. Michael the Archangel Cathedral. And whenever there's a feast day, they'll have that feast day saint there. Okay. So you'll come here and you'll venerate this icon, and then you might go over here. In the Russian tradition, the next thing to do would be to go over here and venerate this icon, and then bow in the center to the altar, and then venerate this icon over here. This one is Mary, the Mother of God, and this one is the Holy Face of Jesus. I have another photo of those. We have over here, this is St. Michael, and this is also St. Michael. You can't quite see this, but hopefully there's another photo of it. This one, the oral history of this is that it was rescued from the Neva when it sunk in 1813, and it fell overboard, and a month later it washed up on the shore near the Trinity Church. There were two churches in Sitka. One was St. Michael's Cathedral, and another one was Holy Trinity Church. So it washed up on shore and then it wound up in the cathedral. And this is actually an icon that's a door. It opens and it goes in to the sacristy. It's called the deacon's door, and there's another deacon's door over here. And Archangel Michael is on this door, and Archangel Gabriel is on this door. Okay. Here's the royal doors again, so you can see a tiny bit better. It's very difficult to photograph icons in St. Michael's because of the glare. Every condition I have tried, when it's sunny, when it's dark, I've tried everything, putting lights on it, taking lights off of it, and there's always a glare somewhere. So you know about this, James, right? You recently tried to take photos. All right, but anyway, this is the Annunciation. There's Mary over here hearing that she's going to be the Mother of God, and Archangel Gabriel telling her, then Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And this is also a lamp that's lit, and when the doors open, it has to be elevated up high. So there's a pulley. It's a very interesting building. But there's a pulley inside the royal doors on the inside. That gets pulled up and then fastened on the side so it doesn't get in the way. And then after services, it gets let down again. All right, here's the same thing you just looked at, but a whole series of them. This is the royal doors looking into the sacristy, the iconostas. Royal doors closed, and fuller iconostas, chandelier, and over here is the deacon's door, and that's the deacon's door, same door. Now, if you open that deacon's door, that's what you see. So that's what's inside the sacristy. If I had time, I would point out each and everything that was there, but there's some really beautiful items there. And lots and lots of icons that are. This one is an old icon here. Can't quite see it, but as I said, it's hard to take pictures of icons. Okay. These are tapestry icons. I'm trying to show you the wide range of iconography. This is the Holy Trinity. This is a tapestry. And you can see that in the cathedral if you go in there. And they've got them right now, they've got them side by side. And they're rectangular, but almost square. And this is the Holy Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And it's the Old Testament version. So in the Old Testament and in Orthodoxy, we don't depict the Father and the Holy Spirit. So they're depicted as angels. Yeah. All the three of them, and they're all equal. And over here is St. Michael, Archangel Michael. But the gold thread is quite beautiful in person. Okay, then this is Our Lady of Sitka. And that's a very large icon. It's, I don't know, wish I had the dimensions on the tip of my tongue, but maybe 4 feet high and 2 feet wide, possibly. It has handles here, and on the other side of it, there. It was written or created in the late 1700s by an artist, an iconographer, Vladimir, couldn't fit it all in there. He lived from 1757 to 1825, and when his iconography period was over, he became the court portrait artist for Catherine the Great. So he had quite an illustrious career. And he came from a family of iconographers. He was Ukrainian. Our Lady of Sitka is also considered a wonder-working icon that heals people sometimes. And I think we handed those out, so that's what the one you have. She has a riza, this metal on top of the icon. So under the riza is a fully painted icon. The riza, in this case, is very sculpted. It's three-dimensional, and that is not traditional Russian Orthodox. So it shows that it had Western influence, Western art influence, as do many of the icons at St. Michael's Cathedral. Okay. This is a processional use. That's why there are handles on the icon of Our Lady of Sitka. She travels around. What are we doing there? And when they were trying to raise money for the new cathedral, she went on tour all over the United States and to collect money. So icons can be written. We say written rather than painted, but it's a similar process. Written on a wide range of surfaces and serve various church roles. So over here we have a processional cross, and it's a painted or written icon on wood. And it has a long handle, so it can be held high up. And then you can see some of the banners on the sides here. But here, this is a banner. It's so old that it's been encased in glass. But if you look at some of the old pictures of St. Michael's, you can see the processions where they have these banners. Okay, this is a reliquary icon. So some icons are used to hold relics. Anybody tell me what a relic is? What's your understanding of a relic? A bone?
Saint's part.
Yeah, it's a saint's part. Like, could be hair, bone is most common though. So this is a piece of bone from this saint, and this is Saint Herman of Alaska. So he never came to Sitka, but he lived his life in Kodiak area. But he's the patron saint of Alaska, and he was one of the first missionaries that came here. So he's a very beloved saint. So this is a very old icon. And then sometimes icons can be, this is metal, and it is used to cover sacred texts. So we have lots of sacred texts at St. Michael's that have icon covers. And this is called a plashchenitsa, and what are you doing? Why is that happening? Well, I'll just keep talking anyway. This is a shroud, and it is put over top of the tomb of Jesus during the Pascha, which is Easter. So the only part of it that would be visible on the top of the tomb would be this part. And then this other part hangs down the sides. And I'll show you another picture of what it looks like when it's on a tomb. And these are cherubim and seraphim, cherubim, I think. 6-winged angels. Told you, it gets like a spider web. Trying to remember all this. We have some other angels in it too, here and here. And of course this is Jesus in the tomb. There's some very beautiful plashchenitsas, and they're very sacred. This is not even in the United States, but I found a nice picture The Plashchenitsa would be over here. This is the tomb of Christ. Very, very ornate, very sacred. This has a roof over top of it. And there's a banner that we showed you before. And the priest is wearing black because it's a funeral, really. Jesus died. And then this is more like what we have at St. Michael's Cathedral. If you come in on Good Friday or Saturday, you will see this. This is Jesus' body here. And here it is hanging down over the edges of the tomb. Now there's actually a coffin underneath of this thing. And then this is the gospel on top. And people will come up and venerate the shroud, the Plashchenitsa. And there's usually tremendous amount of beautiful flowers all around, just as if it was a funeral of a very important person or a very holy person. Okay. It's quite an experience. Okay, going back to St. Michael's Cathedral, we have museum cases in St. Michael's, you might have noticed, against the walls up front. And these are some of those cases, and I'll point out some of the things that are in there. How are we doing with time? Quarter after? Oh, okay. All right, these are matrimonial crowns. Those are crowns from the pre, well, I don't know if it's pre-transfer. Good question. We do have pre-transfer crowns, but they're in bad shape. And they're in another case. But these are very old, and they're probably the early 1800s, I would guess. Then we have down here the Sonoma chalice. And I have another slide of just the chalice. And this chalice was made for Fort Ross. And Bishop Innocent took it down to Fort Ross personally to give it to the priest there. But when he got to Fort Ross, of course it was not very easy. He didn't just get on a plane and fly to Fort Ross. It took a long time, and it had to sail down there the next time the Russians were going down there. And when he got there, there was no priest there. No priest assigned there at that time. So he brought it back. So we've had it up here ever since. And so we have a relationship with the people at Fort Ross that we have their chalice and their gospel. There's a gospel also. And they let us keep it. And it has written documentation inside of it that says, that this was supposed to be for Fort Ross and blah, blah, blah. Okay, what else do we have in this case? This was a gospel of St. Matthew, and that is something that Bishop Innocent used. This piece here fell off. These are the four evangelists, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. This piece fell off, and it was replaced with a flat piece that doesn't have an icon on it. But this is the icon of Christ, and then the four evangelists there. This is also the gospel of just Matthew. Oh, this is the four evangelists there. This is a cross that's made with ivory and a sliver of the true cross, the cross that Jesus was crucified on. So it's also considered a relic. It has a reliquary, it has a relic in it somewhere in the back. And then this is, you can't see it in the photo, but this is such a beautifully sewn cover for chalice. It's a dark green velvet, and then it has a petty point on it. Little, very tiny petty point. And this is the Sonoma chalice. It's quite beautiful, and it looks like it's never been used, but it does get used. We use it sometimes. Because it was made for Sonoma, California, where Fort Ross is. So that's why it's called Sonoma. I'm not sure who gave it that name. But, so it has lots of icons on it. You see, here, here, all four sides there, and then here, all the way around. This case has a lot of little bits in it, and things that come off of old icons or came off of old sacred texts, just little bits of things. And this is the original key from the first cathedral. Pretty cool, huh? And these are nails that were in the original cathedral. And this icon is St. Nicholas, and this is ivory around here. And this one, I'm not sure which saint that is. You have any?
Is it elephant ivory or walrus ivory?
Oh, good question. I would guess walrus. Do you know what saint that is? No. Okay. Moving right along. This is another case we have that has things that Bishop Innocent used. This is his mitre that he wore. And on the inside of this mitre, or hat, are sweat stains. So I always think of that then as a relic, because it has something from his body in there. And this is a gospel that he translated. It's Aleut. It's written in Aleut, if you could open those pages. But it has a metal cover that has icons, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and Christ there. This is the original seal. So you put a piece of paper down here, and you pull the handle down, and then you have an imprint. Okay. Originally it was in Russian, of course, but somewhere along the line they made it into English. So now it seals things with an English. It says St. Michael's Cathedral on it. This is another this is a chalice that St. Innocent used, Bishop Innocent. And this is a spoon. You can barely see because the ground behind it is also gold. This is the communion spoon. So there's one spoon, and the priest gives everybody communion from the one chalice using the one spoon. So it's a communal experience. Here we
do that today?
Excuse me?
Do they do that yet today?
Yes. Yeah. Over here we have Our Lady, Joy of All Who Sorrow. It's 1763, St. Petersburg. It's a beautiful icon, and it has it's encased in quite a frame, so it's protected now. But when I first came to St. Michael's, I was singing in the cathedral, and it was right behind me, and I could hear pearls were falling off of it. So the priest at that time, he took it and he ran over to a man that used to live in Sitka. He doesn't live here anymore, and he framed it, and he did a beautiful job. It's a beautiful frame. But that's one of the few joyful icons that there are. There's a lot of sorrow in Russian Orthodoxy. There's a lot of sorrow, sadness, and strength in the sorrow. It's strength and inspiration. But this one is kind of joyful. And this is the Annunciation. It's also carved ivory. And that's from 1822. These have silver rhizas over top. The metal on top is a rhiza. These are more flat than the Our Lady of Sitka one, but they're still not flat. They're still somewhat sculpted. This is Our Lady of Kazan. That's the pose or the style. And over here we have the Holy Face. And you were at the iconography workshop? The Holy Face. Okay, that's the Holy Face. Very popular image. So it's brass that's got silver over top. And an icon underneath. So it's fully painted underneath. Both of them are. This is I'm sorry it's so fuzzy, but this is a whole wall of icons. I'm not even going to start on it. But and this is another wall. And this one here is worth mentioning. It's this one is written or painted on canvas, not wood. And it was created up in Kodiak. Some of the native people up there were taught by the Russian priests or iconographers how to make icons. So they did. And this one has an icon within the icon. So this looks a lot like Our Lady of Sitka, so it may have been meant for St. Michael's when it was created. It's very large, and it's rectangular, as you can see. This one is very beautiful, too, but you can't really see it, so we'll just move on. These are here. We have quite a few of these. I know you can't see them because of the reflection of the light, but we have, there's another one there. We have them all over the cathedral, these horizontal religious paintings. They're not icons, but they're religious paintings. They depict events, religious events. This one here, I believe, is also a painting, an icon from Kodiak that was made by native iconographers. And this might be, and this one is definitely. And this is Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and John over here, smaller. And they also might be. And those would have been made in the very early 1800s. This is, good, we're getting near the end. This is Our Lady of the Inexhaustible Cup. This is another joyful icon. We like to pay attention to the joyful ones. And it's new, and it's quite large, and it's made actually into a shrine. So it has a sort of a roof, and down here it has, I don't know what that's called, but it has a bottom. And this here is about 3 feet off the ground, I guess. So the icon is quite large, and it's very colorful. And this is Our Lady of the Inexhaustible. This is the cup, and Jesus is in the cup. And she is the patron of alcoholics, or any kind of addiction. So she's very popular right now. And these are the saints of Russia, and these are the saints of Alaska, or people of Alaska. Some of them are saints. And this is St. Michael's Cathedral. You can't really see it. Excuse me. St. Michael's Cathedral, and there's Mount Edgecombe. And we had flowers made for this when we installed it in the cathedral. Now it's over this way, over against that wall. So if you come in and you're looking, you want to see it, go and look on that side. And I think Father Michael Alexa is going to give a talk in a couple of weeks. He's going to be talking about, oh no, I think it's only the 6 saints of Sitka that he's going to talk about. Anyway, this one, the iconographer prefers to remain anonymous. And most icons are in that category, where the iconographer prefers to be anonymous. He is very experienced iconographer, and he is down in Washington State. And 2 of our parishioners went down to Washington and picked it up, and it wouldn't fit on the plane, so they had to come on the ferry with it. But it was quite a big deal when it arrived. This is the same icon over here on the left. You can see certain aspects of it better. There's that impossible moment in the photo. This is the one that, is he still here, James? Oh, yeah. So, yeah, he finally took a fabulous photo of this. Photoshop? How many takes did you have?
Just one very long day.
Very long day, yeah, see? And this is one that's not in St. Michael's Cathedral, but it's another variation of Our Lady of the Cups. And I brought one with me that's even more different looking. So you're welcome to come down and look at that.
Anna, you have about 3 minutes.
Okay. Well, this is the last slide. Oh, no, there's one more. One more slide. And this is the 6 saints of Sitka. And Father Michael Alexa is the one, he did the research on these 6 persons, men. We knew about St. Innocent and St. Tikhon. They were both bishops here and lived at the Russian bishop's house, and then later became the Metropolitan of Moscow, and both died in Moscow. He died natural death, but he was killed by the Soviets after he got caught up in the Russian Revolution. And then, let's see if I can get this straight. This is St. Yakov Netsvetov. He was the first Alaskan native priest. His father was Russian, and his mother was Aleut. So he was from Atka, and he became a missionary. He went to Russia to go to the seminary, and he was ordained in Russia at the same seminary that Bishop Innocent went to. And they were only a few years apart in age, actually. But he came back here, and they sent him to the Yukon-Kuskokwim area to be a missionary there. So he didn't speak any of those languages. He spoke Russian and Aleut, but he didn't speak Yupik. And so he learned some new languages, and he also, like Bishop Innocent, he wrote the sacred texts. He translated them into the native language and gave the native language a written form. Of course, the written form was Cyrillic letters, right? And then these two were, I think they were ordained in Sitka, and then at some point they went back to Russia and they were killed. The Soviets killed them too, but I think one of them was in the 1930s, so it was later. And then this one, well, anyway, I have a little legend here. He wasn't murdered. He was just a Serbian. He founded a lot of churches and was a favorite saint, but he was ordained here in Sitka. And then in this icon, we have Our Lady of Sitka here. She's overseeing the whole group. And we have St. Michael's Cathedral, where they all served at St. Michael's Cathedral, and they were all ordained at St. Michael's Cathedral. He wasn't ordained at St. Michael's Cathedral, and neither was he, but they served at St. Michael's Cathedral. Mount Edgecombe, you can see there, and Mount Verstovia. And then we have ravens and eagles and devil's club leaves at the bottom. Here's the raven and eagle and devil's club leaves. And I think that's the last. That's it.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. So I know Anna brought a few icons, so we do need to be out of here by about 8:15 or so. But if some people want to take a couple of minutes, if anybody didn't get one of the postcards of the icon, I guess there's more up here and there's some on the back table because I know some people came in late. So thank you very much for coming.